We've all been there. We've all seen it in a classroom. A teacher asks a really tough question. A student gives a pretty good answer. And the teacher, wanting to be encouraging, says, "Great job," and just moves on. It feels right. It feels supportive. But what if that helpful instinct is actually, surprisingly, holding students back? Today, we're going to dive into why getting it 100% right isn't just a tiny detail. It's everything.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Picture it. A student gives you an answer that's, say, 70% of the way there. What's your next move? Do you praise the effort and fill in that last 30% yourself just to keep the lesson chugging along? Or do you hold out for the full 100%? It's such a classic classroom moment, right? But your choice here, it matters a whole lot more than you might think.
Well, this habit actually has a name. It's called rounding up. It's that impulse we all have to accept a close enough answer, fill in the gaps for the student, and keep things moving. And look, it comes from a good place. We want to build confidence, and we are always fighting the clock. But this small, seemingly harmless act, it has some surprisingly big consequences. And as the educator Doug Lemov, who wrote the incredible book Teach Like a Champion, points out, this reluctance is totally understandable. Of course, teachers don't want to rain on their parade with demands for a perfect answer. You see a student who's trying, they're getting close, and the last thing you want to do is crush their spirit. It feels like the most supportive thing to do in that split second. But, and this is a big but, here's the dangerous trap it sets. This rounding up creates what Lemov calls the illusion of progress. The student thinks, "Hey, I got it right," and feels successful. The teacher thinks, "Great, they understand," and also feels successful. Everyone feels good. But in reality, a critical learning gap has just been wallpapered over. The chance for deep learning, gone. So if rounding up is the problem, what's the solution? Well, it's a really powerful and precise technique called right is right. And this is the standard that completely flips the script on close enough. The right is right standard is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It is an unwavering, uncompromising commitment to only accepting answers that are 100% correct. We're talking complete, precise, well-spoken. It's all about setting and then defending a super high bar for what it really truly means to know something. And just look at the difference in the language. It's night and day. On the left, with rounding up, you hear things like close enough, or a teacher saying, "Good, the answer is 48, when the student actually said 42. It basically ends the thinking process. But on the right, the language of right is an invitation to keep going. Phrases like, "You're almost there," or "Check your eights facts again." They signal, "I believe in you, now finish the job." It demands they cross the finish line themselves. Now, I know this might sound a little tough, but it's not about just being a stickler for the rules. The right is right standard is actually deeply rooted in cognitive science. It's all about how our brains really build and store knowledge for the long haul. So a key idea here is something called schemata. Think of these as the mental file folders our brain uses to organize information. When a teacher rounds up a partial answer, they're essentially telling the brain, "Go ahead and save this flawed, incomplete file." That error gets baked right into long-term memory, and believe me, it is so much harder to fix it later on. Let's really break down that cognitive cost. When it comes to retrieval practice, actually pulling info from your brain, rounding up just reinforces a failed attempt. But right is right forces the student to fully light up that entire knowledge network, making the memory way stronger. Same thing for those knowledge schemata. One way risks saving a corrupted file, the other ensures the memory is perfect and complete. And for you, the teacher, the diagnostic power is a game changer. Rounding up hides where the kid is really struggling, while right is right gives you this crystal clear data on exactly what they need help with. Okay, so we get the why behind this standard. It makes sense. Now let's get practical. How do you actually bring this level of academic rigor into a real live classroom? Lemov breaks it down into 4 key actions. First, hold out for all the way. Just don't settle for an incomplete answer. Second, address factual imprecision. That small math error, it's not small, it's a symptom of something bigger. Third, demand precise language, because our ideas are only as strong as the words we use to talk about them. And this last one is so important. Correct the fill-in instinct. Teachers have to literally train ourselves not to give away the last piece of the puzzle. Okay, let's make this super concrete. A student names just one vowel. The rounding up response is to say, "Great job." And then you list the rest, which basically takes all the work away from them. The right is right prompt is, "That's a strong start. Now hold out for all the way." See, the ball is still in their court. Same with a math error.
Instead of just giving them the right answer, the prompt is, "You are very close. Check your 8's facts again." The main takeaway here is that the cognitive work, the actual heavy lifting of learning, it has to stay with the student. Now, this next point is absolutely 100% critical. You cannot, I repeat, cannot have this high standard of academic rigor without an equally high level of psychological safety. The two go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And you get there by building what's called a culture of error. This is a classroom where students get that mistakes aren't just okay, they are essential. An error isn't a failure to be ashamed of. It's data. It's an opportunity. This is what makes it safe for students to take the kind of intellectual risks that real rigor demands. And this culture is built on 4 key practices. It starts with planning, thinking ahead about the common errors you know your students are going to make. Then, it's about normalizing those mistakes when they happen, making it safe to be wrong. From there, you don't just correct the error, you excavate it. You dig in and find out why it happened. And finally, you empower students to own and track their own corrections, so they become the architects of their own learning. Okay, let's zoom out for a minute, because this whole conversation isn't just about good teaching strategies or cognitive science. This is about equity. I mean, decades of research have shown us that the single most reliable predictor of a student's achievement is, believe it or not, high expectations from their teacher. This is the Pygmalion effect in action. What a teacher truly believes a student can do often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's that powerful. And this is exactly what makes Right is Right such a powerful engine for equity. It's a system. It forces a teacher to apply one single, high, unyielding standard to every single student in the room. It acts as this practical shield against the quiet, implicit biases that might lead us to round up for one student but demand more from another. It communicates an unwavering belief in every single child's capacity for excellence. So as we wrap up, the question isn't whether right is tough. Of course it is. The real question is this: where in your classroom, in your conversations with your students tomorrow, can holding this high bar of 100% correctness make the biggest difference? Because trading that little bit of short-term comfort for genuine long-term mastery might just be the most powerful and the most equitable choice a teacher can make.